NAV Security have two solutions included in it. All ships with the same objects, so it's not like it needs to be imported, but it's just two sides of the same application. Login and permissions is a set of tools for standard NAV security. It allows reporting and a lot of simplifications also. Field level and data security is the other side of the solution, and that's where normal NAV security is not enough, so you can use that for enhancing it. It makes changes to the code on the pages to enable those features, but the code changes are made with a wizard and can also be removed the same way. And typically in a larger environment, those changes will not even be in a development database. They're just being done as objects are getting ready to deploy it. You can use each part individually, and as you install it, you run a wizard, and that will actually copy all the current setup into the tables that we use for maintaining security. Login and permissions are the tools for normal NAV security. For maintenance of users, we can group permission set and companies. We can also add an expiration date on individual access controls, and in that way it's easy to assign temporary permission. When as building permission set or setting up security in general, we have a new concept we call quick security. You deny access to the things that are important, and we have already added many of the setup tables to this, and then you only have to build permission sets for the things that has been denied in there. We also ship more than 100 new permission sets for NAV. They are intended for segregation of duties and allow very precise assignment to only a single task, typically in NAV. As you build new permission set, we can record permissions, and we record both table data and also the objects being used. When knowing about the objects, it's allow a whole new level of security. An easy way to remove access to financial information is to remove all the pages and reports, of course, showing that data. We have many features that can document NAV security, and every time we change security, we do it inside our application. We can then roll back to a previous point in security because we create restore points, or we can also use these restore points to see changes over time. The other part of our solution is field level and data security, and a person can be a super user or they can be very limited. We will still be able to enhance the security with this functionality. For pages, we can make them read-only, or we can completely hide them for people. We can do the same for fields, make credit limit read-only, or hide all the information about costs on sales lines, for example. We can also create action security, gray out an action like release, or completely hide many of the actions on a page. All these things can be done with the hiding. Is actually a good way of simplifying the whole application inside NAV. The last part of this application is that we can actually create data security also. It will allow us to filter data on a page, so we only show certain records in there. We also have a way of mapping a user to many dimensions in NAV and use that in our filtering. All the features in field level and data security are done by adding code on the pages, but they will be added with a wizard in here. I finished the installation of NAV Security in here and selected one of the role centers that our solution come with in here. You can also find our menu in the department menu, of course, in here. As we ran our installation wizard, we copied all the current security that the customer had into our tables, and in that way after running that, you'll be starting out with the security a customer had already in there. We have a list of logins, and then we have permission sets in being the two key parts in here. But allowing grouping is an important piece also in here. And everything you would do inside our application can actually be exported and imported. So as you have set up easy security in a test or training environment first, you will be able to export all the resulting security and import them into your production environment after running the installation wizard. As we look at users in here, users are what normal NAV refer to. We actually have logins inside our application in here. Everything that you will be working on is offline in here, and you will then use a function that is called publishing to push the permissions into the normal NAV security. So for login and permissions, we don't change how security is enforced in NAV. We have a lot of tools and features that allow you to make it a lot simpler in here. As you want to add a user, several things happen inside NAV when you add a user actually. So you don't do it from inside our screen. You would actually add the user inside the normal NAV page in here. So I'll go here and add my user that I have already created, Sarah, in here. I could go ahead and assign permissions if I wanted to Sarah, but in this case I just want to create the user. One thing to be aware of is that NAV, when you create a user, the actual ID is not the demo/Sarah up here. It's actually an unique ID in here. So creating the same user in multiple databases actually ends up creating multiple unique IDs in there. Not a problem for our application with export-import, because we export with the human readable part in here. As I have added Sarah in the list, when I get back to our pages, Sarah is not in here. And that's because the same way as we work offline, modifying data and then publishing, we do the same for pulling in information. As I just added a new login in here, I can use this function get new logins from live. But there is also, if I open the publish screen, a function that is actually called get new data from live. And it will pull in all the information we use for calculations in here on the get new data from live. I just want to pull in the logins in here, so I'll be using this function. But the other one would do exactly the same, plus a few more things. So it created a restore point, allowing me later on to go back and compare these ones. And then it added my new login, Sarah, in here. As I now look at Sarah, you can assign permission sets as you traditionally do in NAV. We suggest you build groups as much as possible. So you have a group for customer service, and if somebody do something different than normal customer service, you could add an additional permission set for that function, for that single person, for example. But I will take a look at the groups that is in my database in here, and all the one with E underscore are sample groups that we actually will be shipping with our solution, and also matching a spreadsheet you will see a little later. We also have some for quick security down here, where it actually is a different way of doing setup for security. But I have created some in my database here manually, and I'll be able to see that those ones are actually containing all the things that a person would need to work in NAV, access to log in, and the task they would be performing in here. We can also combine these groups together. So you're building the lower levels, and then you actually, by combining the individual groups and adding additional permission sets, can make people with higher level access in here. I will select the group sales in here. As I want to assign companies in here, we also can do groups of companies in here. And you can of course have individual groups only containing one company as traditionally. But I have created a group down here called operations containing 2 companies from my database. This one allows me, of course, to assign multiple companies with a single record under the user, but it also allows me to have totally different company names between a test and a production environment, but still be using the same security. And if I in the future would add a new company name, like Kronos Asia in here, for example, all I will have to do is add it to the group, and the users will actually gain that access in there. With the data in our application stored in a separate company, we typically always create a group that is all companies minus the Easy Security company in here. In that way, we will be able to hide the Easy Security company for everybody else except the one that actually would need access to this one. But I'll select this group operations in here. As I update my login, we will calculate information inside our application. And I would normally be maintaining 28 combinations, and we also calculate something called summary permissions in here. Summary permission are the total access a user have in the system. So I can see down here in my vendor ledger entry, I have only read permission. We abbreviate the security read, insert, modify, delete, and execute to a short string that makes it easy to read out here. And uppercase mean yes or full access, and lowercase mean indirect or kind of a half access to the application in here. On top of this one, we also built something we call summary results. It's actually a more functional level of saying what can a user actually do in the system. So if I look at this one about posting sales credit memos, on top of the summary permissions, we have calculated a lot of other information in here. If you can insert in GL entries, custom ledger entries, credit memo headers, modify the sales header, and run these code units down here. This is the permission required for actually posting to a sales credit memo in here. In that way, you will be able to calculate this one, and as users are changed, see how they actually gain access to more functions out here. This summary permissions and summary results will be able to be calculated for anything, also for groups, individual permission sets, and things like that one. I'll show that later in here. We can also assign temporary permissions in here. So if I need Sarah here to be operation manager in my North America company, I will go and add that permission, but I'll also put in a date when this permission actually expires in here. So at the 1st of November, this permission will actually expire in here. We won't delete this line. The only thing that happens is we will actually check there's no permissions in here. So at this point, it's not an active permission any longer. We also use this manually when upgrading from an old setup with security. You don't have to change or delete all the records. You just mark them with no permission. If you have to roll back, you can simply reset the no permission again, and it will allow people to have the old permissions back again. As I now added more access for Sarah in here, when I now update the login, I can see I got more combinations. My summary permission also changed, and out here I got a fair amount of more functions in here, now being able to post purchase invoices also. The summary permission is a very useful place to actually find out several things about where a user gets permission from. So as I look at my vendor ledger entry, again, I can now see I have indirect insert and modify, allowing me to post to the vendor ledger entry, of course, in North America. We can look backwards and see where did that actually came from. And there's 7 permission sets that give me access to the vendor ledger entry in here, or table 25. 5 of them were from Operation Manager, and I can see the level of access. The one that allowed me to insert was the one about posting purchase documents out here using the normal NAV security permission sets. We can also look the other way, kind of navigate on security in here. So I will see that I have 117 permissions assigned in here. These ones are the permission sets, and this one is the level of access out here. We can also look into relations and other things in our application actually in here, and even look at summary permissions across the whole system, for example, in here. Assigning permissions to user like Sarah in here have now only been done in my application in here. To actually make this active, I will need to go here and publish permissions in here. You can also publish a single login. So if I make a change to a single person and I want to test only with that person maybe, you can make a publish selected to live. But in general, you should use a full publish function in here. That is calculating a lot of things that is just being done automatically, like quick security and object level security in here, and then it will also update all the permission sets based on the current code in the database in here. As it gets to the part of the logins, it will be recalculating all the things about expiry and things like that one in here. If you only do selected, it's intended to be testing a single person in there, but in that way you would be able to, instead of modifying 10 people that is part of a group, you maybe could just check with a single one that the new permissions were working in here. Before we change security, we'll create a restore point, and the last part is we actually write the changes. This one is only the few things that are different in here. And we assume that Easy Security owns the NAV security. We do not prevent manual changes to the normal tables in NAV, but as we publish, we will set it to what we think it should be based on the data inside Easy Security in here. So you can make changes, but just be aware they will be overwritten as we actually do a publish in here. We also have wizards to export and import, as I mentioned, but we can actually also go through a wizard and replace security on many users at the same time, for example, in here. It will ask for what do you want to add to them? Do you want to do it only for a group of companies, or do you want to replace all the existing security in there? And in that way, it's very easy to deploy things like quick security and getting rid of super data, for example. Maintaining users is one part of our solution. The one where it's normally very time consuming initially is to build new security. And we really have two ways of doing permission sets in here. One is a traditional one that you would do in NAV. You build permission sets for all the things a person will need to be doing in the system, basically only opening up for what they need to have in there. It can be very time consuming, both to figure out what a person would need, but also to be able to specify all the details necessary in here. We can record permissions, so it's not so much the technical part about building the permission sets, but the part that's figuring out what it is people would need to do in there. The other way is what we call quick security. We will build some default security, kind of like assigning people super data, but super data that has been reduced with many things actually. Both have removing objects, but also removing access to data, both reducing to the read level, but also completely removing access to other things. I want to go through first how we would actually build new permissions in here. And we can record permissions simply by using the application in here. To record permissions in all versions of NAV, we use the SQL Profiler. So I will go here and open up my profiler in here. I have in my setup in here created the templates that we have imported, but I have actually also created another template that is only specifying a specific login in here. With NAV 2016 and later, there's a lot of caching, both of code and also of data going on. So I really want to go and restart my service tier before I actually start recording anything in here. So I will go here and create a new trace. I will select my service tier, and I could go in here and filter on additional things, but the thing is my login name is using my NAV recording service in here, or my user NAV recording that is running my service tier. So I'll go ahead and run this one in here, and it now sets with a transaction every second, but not a lot of things going on in here. To do precise recording, I would need to first of all be ready to it. So in this case, I maybe want to be in a different company. The other thing is I would like to reset my caching in here. So you do that by restarting the service tier, and you of course at this point don't want to have everybody connected with the same service tier, because then you restart all of them in here. You also want to be only one user, and I can see my NAV recording service tier. I can restart that one in here. So now restarted my service tier, and I'm not connected to that service tier right now, so it don't affect my client in here. But if I go select server, and I will select my NAV recording service tier, this service tier have a setting where it actually won't cache the objects as 2016 and later are actually doing in here. In that way, we will be able to capture all code being executed inside NAV also. So I'm now logged into North America. I'm ready to start recording, and I haven't clicked on anything yet. So I will go here to my profiler, stop it, and then start it again in here. And it now starts capturing everything that happens in here. So I can go use my department menu, search, or I could use a web client also if I wanted to. It didn't matter how I actually do the transactions. We're going to just capture what's happening underneath in here. Since I have disabled the caching of objects in this service tier, I will go every time I see something, it will be working a little slower in here, because it basically needs to read all the code. But that is of course what we need for adding or finding out what security is needed in here. So I'll change a single field on the address, and I'll go ahead and close this customer again. So I used a few screens and I did a single change in a customer in here. So I'll stop this trace and save it as a trace XML file in here, and I'll just call this one edit customer in here. And I don't need my special service tier any longer, so I'll actually go back to my other service tier. You could actually have two sessions, one running on the normal service tier and one running on the one that was for recording in there. Or you could have a totally different person connect to the recording one, and you would actually be recording what they were doing in here. So as I now go to permission sets, I'll create a new one, and I'll just call it edit customer. And I will then go ahead and add my recording in here. I'll select my file, and it will summarize the information in here. It will show me a screen with some performance data also that is quite useful for debugging performance in NAV, because it will actually talk about the tables, the objects, and things like that one in here. So I could drill down on all these numbers. But I'm going to just get the summary of all that, and editing a single customer was actually 89 permissions in here. This one is now a recording in my system, and I will be linking this recording to my new permission set in here. I'll also be able to use this recording for other purposes in here. But I can see my customer, I did read and modify. I did a lot of reading. I had modifications to my contacts and other information down here. And if I go look at it, I also know all the code that we're executing, code unit, pages, and so on in here. All this is very important to actually control the object level security. Because if I took the customer card away from people or a code unit, I would actually gain it back simply by recording the process in here. But those 89 permissions are only the beginning. As I now update the permission set, I will take these 89 permissions and apply a source code analysis. The source code analysis is done based on the customer's actual code in the database, and I will get 157 permissions in here at this point. So the source codes, when we install the application, know that there is a relationship between the customer table and the payment terms. And since I can do a modification to my customer, I should really be able to do a lookup to all the table relations. So we will add read permissions for that. We will also add indirect read permission for flow fields. It don't allow you to see the data, but it allows you to calculate values in there. We also do the same for pages. So even if all pages were not shown for this customer in here or for my session, I actually had other fact boxes out here. And this one will work both as I created right now, but it will also work in the future. And that's an important part to keep security working when you keep on adding maybe ISV solutions or adding new solutions to the system. New table relations are getting added automatically. Even new fact boxes for like a document management solution would actually be added with execute permission also in there. When we create these permission sets, we really only have one reference in here, and that's for a recording. If I go in and find one of the recordings or one of the permission sets in standard NAV in here, the one about customer edit, I have 121 permissions, and it's converted to something we call builder permissions in here. Basically kind of traditional assigning an object and a level of access out here. We can also add this recording, and my recording here was recording number 2 in here, the edit customer. I can add this to this permission set now. So as I now update my permission set, I'll see I got a lot more permissions. A lot of this is of course the access to all the code that are now included also. But if I go down and look at the permissions in here, I would see that I actually have recorded I needed read access to accounting periods, to the user setup, and many other things in here based on both the source code analysis, but also the fact that I did this recording in here. So when you create permission sets, the way we link information is also allowing you to reverse quite easily. If I figure out that I really didn't want to have this one, I can just remove the link to this recording. And as I now update my permission set, I can see I got back to the 121 again in here. So recording is really a key to how you will build security, but it's also a way that you actually can combine this one in here. The traditional way of assigning security can also be done, of course, with easy security. if I wanted to have a new permission set that was super data, but only in the human resource module, I can go in and use my builder permissions for this one in here. My human resource module is in the 5200 range in here. And in normal NAV, you can only specify a single object. We allow you to specify ranges in here. So I will go in here and say I want full access to all the tables in the human resource range. It could be reports in the 50,000 area. It could also be a complete ISV solution, both with data and objects and things like that if you wanted to in here. But as I now update my permission set, I will see I got 21 permissions in here. Basically all the tables that are in there in that range. And this will, every time you publish, be recalculated. So in that way, if new tables are added or new objects would be added, it will automatically include them in this permission set in here. I also, when I recorded, added related permissions in here. And we can actually do the same for these manually entered permissions in here. So since I have insert, modify, and delete for all tables in this range, I will now add all the related permissions in here. So in this way, I get 30 permissions instead of my 21, basically based on all my readings in here. So this one allows quite a simple way to build something that gain all the access. And the important part here is, of course, that I want to have this being done every time I publish in here. We can also use this for building something really manual in here. So I'll have a edit customer manual in here. And I know to edit a customer, there's two things I need. I need in table 18, I need full access. But I also want to have access to the customer card. So I'll go in and say my page 21 customer card. I want to have execute, and for both of these ones I want to add the related permissions in here. So really only specifying the most essential parts. But as I now go back and update my permission set, I'll see I get 58 permissions. All the things additional in here is of course the source code analyzer and the one I created myself. And if I go down to pages, I'll see the one I added and all the one that are fact boxes in here being added as additional in here. So it's a very powerful tool to be able to also build manual permission sets in here if necessary, also using the ranges as I showed before. Having all these tools to build security really allows you to define the permission sets quite quickly in here. But you have to now go and decide what is the security I want to use in here. And we deliver more than 100 new permission sets with the solution, where we have actually been using recordings. So the features I showed will actually work also in a customized database. By adding the source code analysis, we also have built a few permission sets. All these E underscore are being imported when we install the application, but these one called ES are something that is actually created by the system, and I will be showing you quick security in here. So most of these ones are for quick security, and some of it is for a more advanced level of object level security also in there. All the permission sets we are shipping. If you look in the installation folder for Easy Security, there's a spreadsheet in there, and that's also all the data for the permission sets. This spreadsheet will explain the permission sets more organized based on the different areas. So we have made the approach saying we want to do one task at a time. If we do one task, we can then open up one task at a time. If we have done a lot of things, we would really be giving people a lot more. So to do segregation of duties, you want to focus typically a permission set on a single task in here. We have created individual document types, and there's not a lot of data permission difference between the different document types. They all use the same table, but an important part here is that they actually use different pages. So if I was doing object level security and had removed the credit memo and maybe the return order pages, people wouldn't be able to open it, but getting this permission set would allow them to get to those pages. We have also separated the functions about posting, so you can give only shipment, only invoicing, only credit memo posting, and so on in here. Journals are also limited or recorded one journal at a time. So you maybe have finance people that only need access to one journal. As you will see, we can easily remove pages related to a certain table and only give back those ones. We have done the same for purchase. We have done it for finance, allowing only to post certain account types and so on. And we have done it for inventory. It's around 80 permission set, and it's very easy to follow the same principle and use the recording for doing additional features the customer has. So in that way, it could both be for manufacturing, but it could also be for a completely custom application that is built for them. We have also created permission set for role centers, and these ones would allow you to click on the menu items in the role center and see the data. It wouldn't allow you to edit a customer because that is a task, but it will allow you to see information in there. And then you have to get into the system, and we suggest, if you want to do precise security, that you don't use any of the permission sets coming from Microsoft to gaining access to the system, at least for the users that you want to control very deeply. You will allow people to log in, and you will allow them to execute objects, two of those objects or permission sets out here, or you will be using quick security for kind of a general level of access and then only be opening up for the task in here. But as you look at this now, when you have task-based permission sets, you can actually now go in and say, what should our customer service people be doing in here? They should not create new customers. So I don't have an X out here, but they should edit customers. They should create some documents. They should make quotes to orders and things like that one in here. Every time there is a X in here, in our application, it would actually just make it a permission group. So you have individual permission sets, you group them together, and you use the groups for assigning to people in here. As you go down and see, you would see everyone have access to login and free objects, and I'll be showing how this one also could actually be accomplished with quick security in here. Each of these columns in here are actually delivered as demo data with our solution. So if I go to permission groups, I can import some data, and I'll be able to see all these E underscore being the one that matches the spreadsheet out here. If I look at these permission sets, there's one more very important part about these ones in here, where if I go up to the one about customer edit up here, I can see it's actually based on two permission sets out here, or two recordings. Recordings can be edited manually in here. So I have one that has all the permissions in here that we have recorded. And this one is actually version 48 in here. This one includes access for 2009 all the way to 2017. So the same permission set actually works for multiple versions of NAV. We have recorded and tested these on the W1 version, the North American, and the German version of NAV actually in here. So these permission sets out of the box will actually work in 3 country versions, in 6 different versions of NAV in here. And we will be adding new versions of these ones with a newer recording version in here. And in that way, you'll be able to have the permission sets we have built. You upgrade NAV, you import our new recording. There's a special function to add new information to the existing permission sets. And in that way, you have upgraded the security from an older version to a newer version in the future. We also have a couple of recordings, and there actually is no permissions in them in here right now, but you could have some functionality that's for the whole sales receivable module. It always required a certain read permission to a setup table for a web integration solution or something. But I could also go in here and say I actually wanted to have my user set up. I, for some reason, needs to have read permission to that all the time. So I actually go in here and say I require read permission. So instead of having to do a recording for everything, you can do a few of these things manually in here, allowing to add those extra permissions. And by separating recordings this way, I can of course also go in here and say, yeah, I want to add my recording I did myself in here, the one about edit customer, because I had some issues that the source code analyzer didn't found. So I actually just went and did another recording. And in that way, you'll be able to have all this combined together in here. And this one, of course, will also, the same way as we can export and import everything, we can actually also in the future import these new recordings and make all this work going forward. It can even be used in a multi-country deployment where you actually will have kind of a global set of permissions, but on the local level you maybe need to add a new recording once in a while. All that I have done in here have of course still only been inside Easy Security, so I would actually need to go do a publish permission before any of these changes would appear out here. It also required a lot of planning and a lot of breaking down the security for me to be able to do all this one and assign security for my logins in here. To get around that, and especially during a go live or an upgrade, there's a lot of things changing in last minute. You could have security needed to be changed also for that. To handle that, we have built something we call quick security in here. It is based on, instead of having very little permission to begin with, you have a fair amount of permission being able to either work in the system, only read information, or kind of having a super access to data in here. We will also be dealing with object level access, and we will be able to log into the system in here. So we will give people this kind of basic level of access to the system in here. And if I look at it right now, there's over 1,200 tables, both for working access, for read, and for super access. But there will be, even on the super level, there will be things like the company table, for example, will be missing in here. So nobody deletes or creates new companies, even with this kind of accounting level of super access down here. If I look at this working access, I'll see a lot of things in here are read only. It is around 400 tables actually that are read only. And we have found there's no need to create new payment terms if all you do is processing information in NAV. And then as you get down to the tables used for processing, including entries and everything, you have the full access. So this one is kind of like a super access to the application, except you don't change any setup, and of course you don't deal with any of the technical features. Reading will have the same, but only read for everything, and you can use that when then giving more permissions on top of it. And then you have a super level access also in here, and this one is an accounting super level access. But if I went down here and looked at some of the system tables, there's several of them that are missing down here. For example, the company table is in here, not in here. The user security and things like that, nobody changes security even when this level of super access. For objects, there's close to 4,000, and it is currently including every object in the system. And this will be rebuilt every time a publish happens. So you add a new object, it will actually add it in here also. All this is controlled with something we call object properties. So as you go in and look at this, I can see the recent payment term showed up read only. was because it was in here as a record with read-only access. I can also go reduce access to other things. So when I actually went in here and looked at all my vendor information and things like that one, I maybe don't want my normal users to be changing or posting anything. So I would actually be able, simply by making this read-only, to have the data level of access, the working people, not be able to do more than read in here. And that means, of course, I will need to assign permission sets to the people that need that access. And those ones are already the ones that are shipped with Easy Security, or the E underscore ones. I could also go in and say I don't want them to deal with my other documents either. So for purchase, I'll make this read only in here. And I really need to control who is posting invoices and who is posting credit memos. And I'll make a few of these tables read only in here also. So I now need permission sets for these 6 tables, but I don't need it for the 1240 other tables in the system. So in that way, the security is actually simplified quite a lot, but still, of course, without having access to the sales credit memo header, there's no way of posting one, of course. We can do the same for objects also in here. So if I wanted to go and take away the chart of account, actually, there's not a lot of options to do that if you're actually looking at the data. Because if you take the GL entries and accounts away, you can't post anything. And as soon as you assign people a permission set that allow posting, it will give it back again. But I can actually make my chart of account no access in here. So in that way, I now removed access to that page from the object level permission set in there. As I would now go and add all my pages, we have a much easier way of finding pages related to certain tables. The relations is the output of the source code analyzer, and it's in a table. It's very easy to filter for reports and pages, for example. And I will see some of them have relationship out here to the GL account and things like that. I could filter on a single table or a list of them myself, but I have a function that can actually allow me to do all that with a single function up here. This one allows me to filter on the things related to finance now. GL accounts, GL entries, journal lines, and things like that one in here, and a lot of the banking information. All these reports and also all the pages down here are now showing financial information in here. And all those ones I want to remove from everybody in here. So I'll make them no access. So out of my 3,900 objects, I have now removed around 140 of them. Rest of them I really don't care about. Most of them I can deal with on the level of data. But at this point, of course, I have just taken all the financial information away from people in here. So to assign security, you would need 3 permission sets, a login, an object, and a data level access in here. And all this quick security is being recalculated as you actually do a publish in here. And I'll go here and start my publish of permissions. And in the meantime, I will log in as a different user in here. I have a user in the system that has been set up to use this quick security in here. So I reduced the permission on the vendor, but it has not finished publishing yet. So I should be able to go change a vendor in the system in here. And I'll just add an address change and close the page, and it works fine in here. If I go in and wanted to add something like a new purchaser, it is one of those 400 tables that you don't really need access to work in the system. So as I try add one, I just get an error that I don't have insert. So all the login, all the setup groups and everything else has actually been removed access for in here. It now finished my publishing down here. So if I actually go now and try modify my vendor again, delete this information, I have lost the access to that table, and I would need one of the permission sets to actually give that access back to the people that needed it in here. The other thing I have lost access to is all my financial information in here. So if I try open chart of account, I get an execute error. If I go back and do another trick to get around the system by using navigate and finding all entries, if I drill down on the GL entries down here, I also lost the execute permission on that page in there. And with 2015 and later, if I actually reconnect, my menu can be calculated based on the user's current permissions. So at this point, I would actually have lost a lot of the menu items in financial management. I have no chart of account or anything anymore. And that also affects my search, of course, because the search is using my role center and my department menu, and I don't have chart of account anymore in here. So in that way, there is no way person can do that anymore in here. We can also take complete areas away like human resource, payroll, and things like that one in here. And doing that would simply require that you would go in the object properties, and I will add them in here and say I want to remove everything based on a special range in object IDs, and it will be in the 5200 range. And you can remove all object types, or you can just take away the data in here. But all these objects or all this data is now showing human resource information, and I'll basically add it to no access for quick security in here. So what it did now was it modified my quick security to remove this one. It's a great way of taking away a payroll solution or something that maybe only a few people in the company should actually have access to. And I created a permission set that easily can give back that information again, of course. So with all these changes in here, I would now need to do a publish permission again. And that's where if I went in and publish selected, as I can do from logins and from permission sets in here, it would not do that whole calculation. So in general, publish permission should always be used in here, because it will recalculate all of it in here. It also recalculate all the permission sets. In the security setup, you can import a new source code analysis. So when new objects are added to the system, you basically import the source code analysis for those modified objects. And in that way, Easy Security will add a lot of these permissions automatically in here. It also calculates the logins, and that's expiry and things like that. And before I do anything, it will create this restore point in here, basically allowing you to have a snapshot of the current security in the system in here. Restore points can also be used for rolling back security. So when you publish something and suddenly a lot of people can't do their job anymore, you can actually go into a restore point and roll back that information in here. So I have my restore point 20 in here, and it's from my live data, as we refer to it being the standard NAV security tables. In that way, I would be able both to see that, but I would also be able to write this back to the normal tables again and roll back security. I can also use these restore points for comparing security. And if you want to use them in the future, you maybe want to keep this one, because we normally only maintain a certain number of restore points in here. So if I want to see what I have done since I actually was pulling in new users, we can use this function up here to compare. And I want to compare data. I want to look at only the users for now, and I want to go back and look at an older restore point in here, and I'll just pick one down here about getting new logins. And as I now do that, I will see that I have a list of users, but Sarah, as I started by adding, is actually now a new user in here. So in that way, you can use this for comparing security, and you can of course compare all the other things that we can store in here. One of the things is also the objects, and if you want to store the objects, you have to add a checkbox in security setup, but then you could compare the date and time, version list, and even the size of the actual objects in there, allowing you some control of what actually is being changed in the code to be able to report on it. To do that, you would actually go here to restore points and include objects in here. But in general, we keep them without it because it makes them smaller and fewer records in the system. All the features I've looked at for now has been mainly showing information in here. But the summary permissions or building information. Summary permissions are really the way you can find specific information in here. And normally we calculate this for users every time it's being changed in here. But we can actually also calculate summary permission for groups. We can calculate it for individual permission sets, recordings, but also for the live users. If you need to do some of this reporting for auditors, it's a good idea you do it for the live users, because auditors typically would like to see the data based on what is actually the permissions out there. So as I now run this update summary permissions, it will actually go through and calculate this both for my live users, but also now for my users inside NAV in here, or inside EC Security. I can go now filter on a single table and see what access people have by company and things like that one in here, if I wanted to in here. But the summary results are where we actually will put the information in about what are people's access to the system in here. And I'll be able to see down here that we have a certain percentage. David don't have access to this purchase posting in here. He only has 63% of the access. There is a very good way of creating reports in here. And I can go in and say I want to know who actually can post purchase credit memos in here. So I will go in and apply a filter for that. I also, of course, need to have full access in here. I'll bring down the advanced filters in here. So I want to look at my live users and maybe also my users in NAV or in EC Security. I want to look at this security calculation in here. And I want to look at the one where I have complete access in here. So I now have a list of people in the system that can actually post and in which companies they can post purchase credit memos in here. There's an easy way to kind of make this one into a report. I will save this view and it will put it in my row center. And as I now have my EC Security role center, I have this function down here, and I will need to calculate my summary permissions, but basically I can now go send this one to PDF, for example, and I will then be able to generate any report I actually wanted in here simply by saving these views in here. So it's a great way for using the summary permissions in here to actually give a lot more visibility in here. But that's basically finished what I wanted to talk about here about the login and permissions, allowing you to set up very precise security, and especially by using quick security, eliminating the need for doing all the permission sets before you can start deploying security. And every time you would do something with reducing a new part of the application, you would really only need to build permission and assign permissions for that part of the application. So it's a very simple way also moving forward with security. And it's not necessarily every person that will be using the quick security that we have, but you maybe have a very large portion of it during a go live or an upgrade. And then you can work one group of people at a time, simply reducing the normal permissions that they gain access with to use another deeper level of security at that point. Maybe even go as deep as just recording the single process an external salesperson would be able to use inside your system.